Now that's what I call stupid in my junior year of high school. This guy asked me on a date. He rented a Redbox movie and made a pizza. We were watching the movie and the oven beeped, so the pizza was done. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "This is the worst part." I then watched this boy open the oven and pull the pizza out with his bare hands, rack and all, screaming at the top of his lungs. We never had a second date. 4. How to win at video games. When I was little, I would go on Nickelodeon.com all the time, and they had this game similar to Club Penguin, except it was called Nicktropopolis. And if you forgot your password, a security question you could choose was, "What is your eye color?" And if you got it right, it'd tell you your password. So I would go to popular locations in Nicktropopolis and write down random usernames who were also in those areas, and then I would log out and type in the username as if it were my own and see which of these usernames had a security question set to "What is your eye color?" Which was most of them, since it was easy and we were all kids. I would then try either brown, blue, or green and always get in. Then I would go to their house and send all of their furniture and decorations to my own accounts. And if I didn't want it, I could sell it for money.
50 Shades of But. So to begin my story, I should tell you that I work at a medical spa as front desk, and my job entails mostly computer and customer service related tasks. However, I am also there to assist the on-shift technician, obviously not with the lasers as I am not certified, but with, well, helping shaving clients to prepare them for their treatment. So this particular Saturday I was asked to help shave a client's back, which was fine. It's part of my job and I just needed to be professional about it, and it's something I've unfortunately had to do before as well, so no big deal, right? Wrong. So I do the usual. I put on my gloves, grab a razor and begin assisting the tech. However, much to my surprise and displeasure, the tech suddenly pulls down the client's pants and underwear, to which I am greeted with a hairy behind. It is all I can do in my power to keep from laughing from sheer shock. I'll spare you the details, but let's just say it was not totally normal colored. Trying to stay professional, I then had to proceed and hold the client's butt cheek torn to shave it. I finished as through and quick as I possibly could and booked it the hell out of the room. Later, when I had to book the clients next, neither of us could look the other in the eye because of that traumatizing encounter. I will probably never be able to live down the moment I looked at the multicolored butt right in the crack. 5th grade teacher. In 5th grade, my teacher loathed me. She would do anything to make me cry and send me to the principal's office any chance she got. Don't believe me, I'm left-handed, so still, to this day, I get my hands confused. On this particular day, we were doing the Pledge of Allegiance and I had put my left hand to my chest. It's supposed to be your right hand over your heart. She got mad at me, telling me that I wasn't being patriotic, and sent me to the principal's office. The principal and I were quite acquainted at this point, and so I told her why I was sent back to her office again, and she laughed. And laughed. I didn't find it funny at all. I mean, all the kids in my school thought I was a delinquent, so they didn't want to be my friend. My principal wrote on the back of my hands, L and R. What I didn't realize was that she wrote L on my right hand and R on my left hand. She did the same to hers. Then, she walked me back to the classroom, and made our whole class redo the pledge with our right hand, with me leading the class, and it was one of the happiest moments of my elementary experience. All glowed up. After the final bell, my friend and I were walking to our buses after school through a crowded hallway. We were talking about childhood and reminiscing about old memories, and we somehow started talking about which people became hot since middle school. My friend mentioned this guy named Keenan and I said, "Yeah, he is pretty hot now," and my friend practically screamed, "Dude, he glowed up so hard." Glowed up means, I guess, like someone became attractive. Anyway, right as she said that, she turned her head and he was right behind us. This is so very cliche, but I swear to God there he was. Anyway, right as she saw him she screamed, "Oh, he's right there." And of course he heard her, but it was so awkward, so he just walked past us looking down at his phone, and my friend fell on the ground from embarrassment.
All the fish. I went to this girl's party the week after she beat the shit out of my friend. While everyone was getting trashed, I went around putting tuna inside all the curtain rods, and so like weeks went by, and they couldn't figure out why the house smelled like festering death. They caught me through this video where these guys at the party were singing Beyoncé while I was in the background with a can of tuna.
Chinese class. I took Chinese at school as a freshman. On one particular day, we didn't have anything to do in class since we had gone through the whole curriculum for the semester. Our teacher wanted us to watch a Chinese movie in that free time, and I just so happened to watch one recently on YouTube. I offered to find it, and my teacher let me use her computer, that was connected to a Promethean board so that the whole class could see what I was doing on the screen. After a couple of minutes of searching, I couldn't find the movie since I didn't know the exact title, so I logged into my YouTube account and decided to find it in my history. When I opened my history, I was mortified since stupid me had forgotten that being the awkward virgin that I was at the time, I had searched up tutorials on kissing and making out that previous night. The whole class was hysterically laughing, my teacher was extremely confused, and I almost cried as I scrolled past all the kissing tutorials and finally found the movie. I went back to my seat and didn't speak to anyone in class for the rest of the week. I still haven't lived it down. Coca-Cola disaster. A couple years ago, my friends and I were going to see a movie in the theater at the mall. Instead of paying the ridiculous movie theater prices for pop and candy, we decided to go to Target to buy some stuff. This was when Coca-Cola started to put people's names on their bottles. My friend told me she had seen a bottle with my name on it inside this bin of Coke. I was weirdly excited since I hadn't gotten one with my name on it yet. After I had bought the drink, I opened inside Target, and it exploded everywhere. The pop was at least 5 or 6 feet in diameter. I watched as people passed the mess and made looks of disgust. Imagine if I had opened it inside of the theater.
The day my teacher stole my headphones during my sophomore year of high school, we were doing silent work and my history teacher said that we could listen to music, but if it was too loud he would break our headphones. So I'm doing my work quietly with my music on low, and this obnoxious kid sitting next to me had his music really loud. I could hear it over my music but ignored it. My teacher thought it was me. So he comes up to me, ripped my brand new Apple headphones, looking ruthless. He suddenly realized it was the guy next to me and he was completely embarrassed. He came in the next day with a new pair and an apology note taped to them. He couldn't look me in the eye for the rest of the year.
Don't sit on cold ground. So a couple weeks ago, me and my friends were sitting on this cement kind of pedestal, as we called it. It's basically the steps up to the portable classroom that no one uses, and this weird supply French teacher comes up to us and says, "You shouldn't be sitting on this ground, it's too cold and it's bad for your ovaries." I asked her how or why, and she said that if children sit on cold ground their ovaries will freeze and that we won't be able to have kids. Now it's an inside joke between us about not sitting on cold ground.
Drama at my drama class. One time my drama class's teacher had gone home sick, so we were just put in a classroom with a movie to entertain us for the period when an alarm went off. None of us were sure if it was the fire alarm or the lockdown alarm, so we all head out into the hall to check and no one's out there, so we head back in and climb under our desks as is lockdown procedure. Cut to an hour or so later when a teacher bursts in and nearly dies of relief because the school was on fire, and we were the only students not accounted for, and half the faculty and fire department had been searching for us for ages. Literally, the whole school had filled with smoke while we'd kept super safe under our wooden desks.
Driver's license. So I was at the local DMV to get my driver's license when my dad pissed off the lady at the counter. Turns out she was the lady that had to do the actual road test with me. We get in the car and I thought I was doing pretty well, until she starts freaking out. She has me pull over, Tells me I'm the worst drive ever. After yelling at me, she demands I go back to the DMV, and the rest of the time she is on her phone. When we get there, there is a state trooper waiting for me, gives me a field sobriety test. Literally had to take a sobriety test when I tried to get my license. At least I passed one test that day.
The fake report card. I failed the first quarter of a class in middle school, so I made a fake report card. I did this every quarter that year. I forgot that they mail home the end-of-year cards, and my mom got it before I could intercept with my fake. She was pissed at the school for their error. The teacher also retired that year and had already thrown out his records, so they had to take my mother's proof, the fake ones I made throughout the year, and correct the mistake. I've never told her the truth.
First phone accident. When I was in the 6th grade, my parents decided I should get my first cell phone because I was going to middle school now and things were different. It was a pink little slide phone where you'd slide it sideways and have the texting keyboard and all. I took decent care of my phone and never needed a replacement. Well, flash forward to Memorial Day weekend. My family and another family went camping up in Pennsylvania for the weekend. Well, one of the days we were up there, my buddy, Oliver, and I decided to take the kayaks out on the lake. Genius me, decided she wanted to listen to the 4 Selena Gomez songs I had on my phone. I thought it would be a brilliant idea to put my phone in a plastic bag to protect it from the water. When we got back from kayaking, I took my phone out only to find the bag was submerged in water. We had no rice or anything to save my phone, so we tried laying it out to dry. Not even 15 minutes later it starts downpouring, destroying my phone even more. My mom ended up giving me her first flip phone, which didn't even have a camera or the option to have music or photos transferred. Lesson learned. Foreign student trauma. When I first moved from Lithuania to America, I was 5 years old and didn't speak any English. On the first day of kindergarten, I was crying so much that my teacher picked me up and let me sit on her lap. Meanwhile, the rest of the kids sat on the carpet in front of me and watched me cry while she explained to them what was going on, in a language I didn't understand. Our school was 3 buildings put together, and the pickup was at the blue building, but my classroom was at the red building, so they put a sign over my neck that said, "I don't speak English and I'm going to the blue building," and sent me away to follow a crowd of other kids. I'm still traumatized. A full sun. After an exhausting, week-long festival, I was getting a lift back home in a car full of my friends. We were coming up over a mountain road with a really beautiful ocean view just at sunset. I'll never forget the outburst that followed when I said, "Wow, it's so beautiful, and it's even a full sun." I momentarily forgot that only moons have phases, and that the sun is generally always full. My friends have never let me live it down. As it turns out, I am gay. When I was around 9 years old, I was starting to get confused about my sexuality, so I would always look up, "Are you gay?" quizzes on our family computer because I was scared and confused, and my mom eventually saw the searches in the history and confronted me about it. I lied about it and said I had accidentally clicked an ad. As it turns out, I am gay. His face looks like the best chair. So there's this really hot kid in my creative writing class. And everyone knows I like him. But one day, he walked in looking like a freaking GQ model, and I accidentally out loud whispered, "Shit, his face looks like the best chair," and the girl who sits in front of me turned around and said, "WTH, that's freaky and gross," and she moved her seat. She gives me weird looks every time she sees me now. How bugs feel. When I was about 5/6, my mom and stepdad bought my sister and I bikes for Easter. After church they were like, "Do you wanna learn how to ride them?" And I was like, duh. I had finally gotten the hang of it and I was riding around the circle showing off, and my mom was like, "Say cheese," so I look over at her for a second and I fucking ram into a car at full speed. A parked car that I didn't even see, like at all. So I just rammed into this car and I fell off my bike and I was crying and all I could think about was, this must be how bugs feel, like they're flying around living life and then splat. Looking back, that was my first existential crisis.
I drew a penis with a glue stick on the whiteboard. My whole class once got detention because I drew a penis with a glue stick on the whiteboard, and when the teacher went to wipe off the board, all the fluff came off and stuck to the glue. I never got in trouble for it because my whole class found it too funny to tell the teacher it was me.
In dreams, I've always had super vivid dreams and it takes me a while after waking up to realize that they're not real. Sometimes, it's a disappointment, but generally I just forget about it and move on. Now, in 6th grade, one had one really close friend who I never actually got into a fight with. One night, I had a really vivid dream where my friend and I had this huge falling out over something that I can't even remember now. I was really good at holding grudges because I was not a forgiving child, so for 3 weeks I completely ignored my best friend in anger to the point where she started crying in front of the teacher and he asked what was going on. Of course, as I'm telling the story, I realize the events were super weird and that it was all a dream. I fall silent and just look at my friend who's still extremely upset and don't know what to say because I had fucked up so badly. In the closet. Okay, so one time when I was really little I had a best friend who was kinda strange, but so my mom got a call one day asking if she was over at my house because they couldn't find her, and so they call again about 2 hours later to ask if we could help look for her, and so about 3 hours of looking we had basically covered the entire neighborhood and they were about to call the police, and we decided to check their house one more time, and my mom went into her room and found her completely naked and sleeping on the top of a super tall shelf in her closet. Little thief. When I was around 4 or 5, I was with my mom at this store buying some Christmas gifts. As we were leaving, I saw these little plushy dinosaurs that fit perfectly in my hands. I grabbed 2 of them and stashed one in each of my pockets. My pockets were so small that they made me look like I had 2 roomers on each of my hips. I still remember the rush of energy I got from actually leaving the store undetected. Well, when my mom and I got to the car, she found them and called the store back and made me apologize. I had the absolute worst social anxiety when I was a kid, so I was absolutely sobbing, telling this poor employee how horrible a person I was. Like I was having a mental breakdown. It was so bad my mom apologized to me afterwards and bought me a nice milkshake. That one time I got lost, so about a year ago, I was in phys ed class, and we went around the neighborhood for a jog at the beginning of each class. I hadn't done it before because of medical reasons, but the teacher evidently forgot about it. I'm incredibly bad with directions and easily distracted, so I lost sight of the rest of the group and went completely the wrong way. I ended up being lost for 2.5 hours. The best part is that I single-handedly changed my school's phys ed policy. Lotion boy. One time in my chemistry class, while the teacher was talking, this guy asked loudly, "Does anyone have any lotion?" The teacher stopped talking as some girl gave him some hand lotion. The guy proceeds to slowly rub the lotion on his face as the whole class watches him in confusion. The teacher asks him what he's doing, and he responds with, "I forgot to moisturize this morning," and puts even more on his face. The teacher asks him to go to the hall to finish his moisturizing because he's being a distraction, and after about 10 minutes he still hasn't come back in, so someone opens the door to check and he's still smearing lotion all over his face. He finally comes back in and hands the girl her lotion, and he's used up half of it. Now people call him Lotion Boy.
My favorite teacher. One time in 6th grade we were at recess, and while I was running to my friends, I just so happened to kick a huge rock. Keep in mind, I was wearing flip-flops, so it hurt like hell, and without thinking, I shouted at the top of my lungs, "Motherfucker." And with my god-awful luck, my math teacher was sitting at the bench right beside me. He then took me inside to what I thought was yell at me, but he just couldn't stop laughing and sent me back outside with a literal candy bar. He is still my favorite teacher I've ever had.
My mom's thong. One day when I was 3, I decided I wanted to be like my mom and wear big girl panties. I sneakily went through her drawer and grabbed the first thing I could find, a thong. I didn't know what it was at the time. She didn't know until we went to breakfast with some friends and took me to the bathroom. She still won't let me live it down. Never wear a dress in Chicago. So when I was younger, my aunt was kind enough to invite me to come along with her to Chicago for my cousin's paintball tournament. I had never been to Chicago before, so naturally I had to go see the big city. Just like any other girl, I wanted to get all dolled up before walking around in front of people. I wore an extremely soft red dress that I was in love with, and some wedges. One thing that Chicago has plenty of is vents, and I ignored them because the ones in my city are never on. This was a mistake, because I just so happened to walk over one that was on. Only to be met with steam hot enough to burn leg hair off, and my dress being blown up to my neck around hundreds of other people.
Painting a roller coaster. So in my junior year of high school, I got a project to make a roller coaster for my physics class. Everything was going fine until the day my partner and I had to paint the thing. We were in my garage spray painting the tubes, and these two guys come marching up to the house across the street and start yelling at the top of their lungs, beating on the door. Now let me say in my defense, the neighborhood I lived in was in South Dallas, and it's still not a safe place. Well, I called the police, closed the garage, and parked myself in front of the dining room window. Long story short, the police showed up in full gear, broke down the door, and brought out the two boys at gunpoint. And that's the story of how my entire block found out that the abandoned house had new owners.
Panic at the Pothole. Once upon a time I had a friend that was going to a Panic at the Disco concert, and she promised me she would FaceTime me so that I could watch with her. So she messaged me at like the middle of the night telling me to answer her FaceTime call, but I was at my neighbor's house, which also happened to be my cousin's house, so I started running out the door and my sister followed me behind and was chasing after me. She asked me where I was going, so I started running as fast as I could, screaming, "We have to get home, I'm not gonna make it. I need to see, why can't I see?" Keep in mind that it's like midnight right about now, but I'm running and halfway through screaming. I stepped inside a pothole in my neighbor's lawn and completely fell in mud, but I got right back up and kept running, muddy as hell, trying to get to my house while my sister was dying from laughter behind me. That's not even the sad part. The sad part is my friend's phone died, so I just sat there with mud all over me at the dining room table staring at my blank phone, just waiting. I waited for almost 2 hours, refusing to take a shower even though the mud was starting to dry up. This was 2 years ago, and to this day every time my sister sees the pothole she starts dying from laughter. Sporting goods. So I have this health teacher who is really insane about exercise. This woman has done Ironman triathlons, and talks about going to the YMCA at 5 a.m. Yeah, she's crazy. Basically, we have this project to pick a health goal to do for a month. Things like drinking water or doing squats. For that you need some motivation, so we were talking about physical things to reward ourselves with. She decided to tell us about her sporting goods fetish, where she goes into a store and buys a bunch of gear like they were books. In the middle of this she suddenly goes, "I really like dicks." Realizing what she just said, she turned red and in a more quiet voice goes, "Please don't tell your parents." Popcorn. My sister, mother, and I were waiting in a long line at the Sam's Club food court. The entire time I was waiting, I was mentally rehearsing what my order would be. "1 slice of cheese pizza, please," my mind was repeatedly screaming at me. When we got up to the cashier to pay, I got distracted by his cuteness, so instead of asking for the pizza, I confidently said, "1 popcorn please," which Sam's Club food court has none of. Once I realized my mistake, I screamed out, "No," loud enough for 50 people to look at me. Embarrassed, I ran away, and my mom and sister had to bring me the slice of pizza from my finding place in the freezer section. To this day, I beg people to order for me when anyone remotely attractive is working the cash register. Skull lover. So I was sitting at a lecture when I feel like being stared at, and in the corner of my eye I see this really handsome guy, who's literally just staring at me. I don't think much of it and continue to listen to the professor. After the lecture the guy comes up to me, and lays his hand on head and I'm like, what are you doing? And he stares me dead in the eyes and says, I've never seen such a gorgeous skull, and then he turns around and leaves. Sniffing candles with my best friend. So my best friend and I were in a supermarket and there were a lot of new candles. They all smelled strange, so we started to think about names we could give them. Grandma's toilet cleaning agent, or South like this. Whatever, I guess we sniffed too much candles because we started laughing very hard and I lay on the floor and my best friend fell into the pasta shelf, which made us laugh even more and louder, and people were already staring at us. Suddenly my brother's best friend stood behind us, and from this day he's thinking that I'm taking drugs. I don't. I just sniff candles with my best friend to burst out in laughter. Socially awkward fail. So one day I was walking around, just chilling with my friends, when I see this guy reading a book. He was new there, but the book was a book I read and loved. So naturally I approached this boy hoping to make a new friend and bond over the series. Being the socially awkward fail I am, I planned out ahead of time what I'd say. Hey, my friends and I, wanted to come over to say hi cause I say you were reading a book I liked and I hope we can talk more in the future. But no, once we got to him I panicked and just had to blurt out, we've come to hello you, and I think my voice cracked and I almost started to cry. Never gonna talk to them again. Sonophobic Adam. I used to babysit this little boy who was a real handful. He was always in trouble and it seemed like every time his dad had to call him it went like this. Dad finds disaster left by Adam. Dad yells out, son of a bitch. Adam. One day I have to pick up Adam's older brother at school. A Catholic school. His teacher, a nun, sees adorable little Adam with his chubby cheeks and face like a cherub and asks him his name and he answers flat out, Sonophobic Adam.
Swear to God he levitated. I have a friend who I've known since I was very little. One day when he was 6, I was at his house when he got this absolutely god-awful stomach pain. I mean, he was literally writhing in pain. So his mom took him to the doctor's office, where the doctor took one look and told her to take him to the ER. She feared something along the lines of an intestinal rupture. About halfway to the hospital, my friend suddenly let rip the loudest, most powerful fart any of us had ever heard. I swear to God he levitated. We thought the upholstery in the car seat had ripped. After a good 30 seconds of intense farting, he looked at his mom and said, I feel all better now.
Thanks.
The teacher asks him to go to the hall to finish his moisturizing because he's being a distraction, and after about 10 minutes he still hasn't come back in. So someone opens the door to check and he's still smearing lotion all over his face.
Big surprise it wasn't.
He finally comes back in and hands the girl her lotion, and he's used up half of it. Now people call him Lotion Boy.
She said she was disappointed I couldn't hold it in and proceeded to tell a story of how she taught a famous athlete who did nearly the same thing. The toilet phase. When I was younger, around 3 or 4 years old, I had a phase of flushing things down the toilet. I would flush McDonald's toys I didn't want anymore or change I had found in my room. The biggest and most hilarious thing I ever dumped was a gallon of milk. One day I was bored and was looking around in the fridge, lo and behold there it was, a new gallon of milk. My tiny body dragged the bottle on the floor all the way to the bathroom. I opened the cap, let it go into the toilet, and flushed. I thought I was smart enough to let it go unnoticed, but I'll never forget what my dad yelled out when he walked in, "Why in the hell is the water white?" My mom found the empty carton and just stared at me. Virtual reality self-prostitution. I used to play a game called Fantasy Star Universe and I would be my own pimp and my own hoe. I had my main account, let's call him Dudeman, and my hoe account, let's call her Galchick, so there was like the main floor area and people would like try to sell nudes for money, in-game, not IRL, and I was like, nobody actually does that, do they? So I made Galchick and I took off her clothes so she was in her underwear, and then I said one thing on the main floor and some guy took the bait right away. He invited me back to his house and I was like, OMG, I'm sorry, I'm new to this. How do you transfer money? And he did it to show me how, and then he asked for my character to teabag his and moan into the mic, and I was like a 15-year-old boy, so instead, I just blocked him and took the money. That's when I realized my one, true calling. I did it for months and I'd transfer the money from Galchick to Dudeman and all my friends wondered how I had super good gear. I miss that game every day.
We don't have a fucking doorbell, so a couple years I moved out of state with a boyfriend. Was super excited about it, but with reason had anxiety about being so far from friends and family. One of the ways my anxiety was coming out was with nightmares and night terrors. I'd wake up violently sitting up in a cold sweat, gasping and whatnot. On one particular night I had woken up the sound of our doorbell ringing, which at 4 in the morning is fucking nerve-wracking. So I shook my boyfriend fully awake and told him I heard the doorbell and to go check it because I was scared. He quickly jumps up, puts on clothes and grabs a bat, goes all the way to the front door and opens it. I, scared shitless, am peeking around the corner watching it all go down. I see him step outside and I nervously await the verdict of the situation when I hear him call out to me. Babe, and I respond real shaky yes. He stands in the doorway with a real frustrated, tired look in his eyes and says, "We don't have a fucking doorbell."
Weed birthday. Last year, during class, my algebra teacher let us listen to music while we did our classwork and whatnot. So, I was just jamming, being super confused on this one problem, and I look up from my paper to ask my friend how to do it, and everyone is intensely looking back and forth between me and another girl with their fingers on their noses. As you can imagine, I was super confused. So, naturally, I also put my finger on my nose. Everybody yelled, "OHHHHHHHHHH," and turns out, it was a nose goes thing, and the other girl had to ask the teacher if she'd ever smoked weed on her birthday because it was 4/20.
The whole school thought I was going to star on Drake and Josh in 2nd grade. I told everyone that I was leaving school before next semester to move to Hollywood to play Megan's cousin from Vermont on Drake and Josh. At first I just told my best friend, but then the whole school found out. I had people coming up to me and asking me for my autograph, and a teacher even asked for a picture with me. When I showed up on the first day of school in 3rd grade, I told everyone that the show was going off the air after the season finished, even though I had no knowledge of when it was ending, and so they wouldn't need me. And the show ended after that season, and everyone believed me up until like 6th grade, but now my best friend will never let me forget about it, and I so angry.
Why my parents can't take me seriously. So one time I was home alone and it was around dinner time when I decided to make myself something to eat. I opened the freezer and dug around until I found what appeared to be chicken nuggets in an unopened plastic bag that for some reason didn't have any cooking instructions. Thinking that my parents must have thrown away the box for box tops, I called my mom to ask how long and at what temperature to cook chicken nuggets. She told me both of them. I laid out about 20 on a tray and stuck it in the oven, setting the timer before I walked out of the kitchen. When it was almost time to get my chicken nuggets, I walked into a cinnamon-scented kitchen. I searched all over that kitchen, trying to find the cinnamon scent, leading me to the oven. I decide to turn on the oven light to see if maybe my mom had stuck some cookies in the oven and forgot to bake them, but instead, I find that the tray my chicken nuggets were on has cookies on it instead. As I'm trying to process what just happened, I hear the front door open and my mom shout delightedly, "Oh, what's that smell?" She walks into the kitchen and catches my confused expression. That's when the spark ignited and she realized exactly what had happened. Somehow in some form, I had accidentally baked snickerdoodles. And that is why my parents can never take my cooking seriously.